Welcome to another episode of the Everyday Sens podcast. I am Jack Richardson, joined as always by Brennan Parks here on this evening of Monday, December 11th. This will be airing probably Tuesday. So we're going to break down the last few games of the Ottawa Senators. A few things happened that we got to touch on, obviously. And later tonight, actually, also, we're going to do a preview for the Sens hosting the Carolina Hurricanes. So we got a lot of content coming up here in the next 24 hours for everyone here. So Brennan, how you doing tonight? Obviously, again, like we're recording Monday evening, Monday afternoon for you. And a good weekend for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I mean, I'm doing better because the Sens have won 3 of their last 4 games, and not just one, but in convincing fashion. That's the most important thing here. Like Ottawa, obviously, we've got some more news to talk about and stuff, but I think their games individually, like they've looked so good. Even in their loss to Toronto, they lost 4-3. They were so close, and they easily could have won that game if not for Joseph Woll turning into prime Carey Price. Like they were right there. So I'm really happy with how the team's playing. That's the biggest thing. And honestly, like it's a lot more encouraging to create content and to talk about the team when they're doing well, obviously. But it's just like the past, we've never had the chance to talk about a good hockey team. And so it's nice to be able to actually talk about a team who most of the league is probably looking at right now as if they're on fire because they are very threatening. This is like at times last year how we felt, where it feels like they could beat anybody. It feels like they could play Boston tomorrow and they could have a really good chance of winning. And it all started with that New York game where they won 6-2. New York had, 5 of 23 games that they had lost coming into the year, and they took it to them. They dominated them. It's nice to see the turnaround. I think there's some factors behind it. Jacques Martin is someone we're going to talk about today. He just came in right after that Rangers game, but he's been around the team. And then obviously, like everything, we've got Alfie in the organization. They showed pictures now. There was Alfie, Martin, Ben Sexton's up in the box. You've got Steos kind of in charge of things. It's just very refreshing to see these faces. And we talked about it before the year. It's not just like who they are, which is obviously awesome to see so many old Sens guys back, but it's the fact that they have so many voices now. Like we talked about how they have such a small front office group. We never saw pictures of people sitting up in the box evaluating every part of the Sens game before this year. You know who we saw? We saw Pierre Dorion sitting by himself most of the time. Sometimes Ryan Bonis, and they were both just doing their own thing and just looking down in disgust most of the time, and that was it. Now we're seeing guys who are actually like strategically evaluating the team, where they're dominating, where they're struggling. Like it's awesome to see. So I'm excited, but yeah, let's get into it because we've got a few topics to hit today.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on Martin because we haven't actually spoken since that change happened, and he's going to be a big topic in the December turnaround that we talk about and everything. But we got to start with obviously this rivalry that is brewing here between Ottawa and Detroit, and I know no one missed it, but we're going to recap what happened anyway. So on Saturday, the Sens and Red Wings are playing. Sens get off to a good start, get a power play goal. Red Wings are on the power play. It's a high paced game. Like this is the third time these teams have played already this season. Like the tensions are high with the DeBrincat stuff in the summer, and like the 2 games from last year, where the Sens just dominated the Red Wings and kind of forced them to sell at the deadline, and the Sens bought Chychrun. Like it was a really that sparked the rivalry for sure. But with every game, it feels like something happens. Like in that first one, it was the call on Greg and then Detroit just couldn't not score on the power play. They just dominated the special teams game in that one, killed the vibe for the Sens, and they kind of derailed their season for a little bit. Go to Sweden, the Sens are up 4-0. Red Wings storm back at 4 goals in 8 minutes. Tim Stützle bats the puck out of midair in overtime. Electric win for the Sens. And then this one. So in the first period, obviously, of that game, scramble in front of the net. Joseph and Dylan Larkin and Parker Kelly are involved in a collision. And I'm using my words carefully because we will get into it here. And unfortunately, and this should be before we even talk about anything, this sucked. Like I don't like seeing anyone lying on, like, I mean, it's crazy that it has to be said, but it does. It was a brutal sight to see someone lying on the ice like Dylan Larkin was after being knocked unconscious from a play that had, in our opinions and in a lot of other people's opinions, no intent to do that, right? It was a weird play. So anyway, all hell broke loose after that, and David Perron just attacked Artem Zub because he saw his captain lying on the ice. We'll get into all of that as well. But yeah, Brendan, like what? Just take me through your thoughts. And I know we've got the video here that you posted, which got a lot of traction because you were the only one, I think, who had both incidents edited together in slow motion. Like honestly, I think that tweet of yours, I don't want to say change the narrative, but like in real time, it's tough. The broadcast didn't even pick up what happened to Zub until later on. But and I can understand it because there's a guy lying on the ice. They wanted to focus on his well-being and everything like that. But why don't you just try and pull up this video here and we can maybe walk through what happened and we could talk about the events that unfolded, obviously, and then we will get into the social media side of things, which is probably what we mean by saying the rivalry is heating up. Because on ice, I don't think this really changed as much, but the online is definitely taking it up a notch. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard thing because like what I put as the caption of the video was that the problem is that people can't differentiate between severity and intent. So when you see Dylan Larkin laying on the ice, and in the original one I posted too, I actually said Joseph headshot at him because from the first angle, this was the angle they showed. Like the one I posted in slow mo, they only showed that angle like one time on the broadcast at the very end. So for the majority of the time, you saw Larkin laying on the ice unconscious, and then they were showing this one angle where you couldn't see Joseph's hands, you couldn't see what he was doing, but it looked like I thought he cross-checked him. I really did think it was a cheap shot at first. I thought he cross-checked him in the back of the head because that's how his hands were positioned. It's not till you saw the other angle that you see he actually had two like open hands and his hands were not on his stick. Like both hands were not on the stick. Stick wasn't even involved. He just kind of like pushed him. Like it's gonna be hard to describe this to people who aren't watching, but I'm gonna do a hand motion. It's like a punch is like when you go like that and you kind of pull back. It's like you got that force behind it. He never did that. He just had both hands and he just like pushed. Like he just pushed Larkin's head. And I think what most people are missing here, and like some big names were angry at Joseph too. Tim Peel, the former referee, was talking about how Joseph should be suspended. And I don't really understand it because I know there's a history with Larkin and Joseph. I don't really know the details. I know Larkin sucker punched him after he got boarded or something, and they have this history. But to say that like Joseph premeditated that Larkin's had past neck injuries, and then like I don't even know what people are trying to say here, but if you watch the play, it's not Joseph that knocks Larkin unconscious, right? It's clearly the fact that he pushes him. Kelly comes in to hit him, and Kelly wasn't even really high. It's just when Joseph pushed his head came down, and then Kelly just kind of got him with the hand, I think, in the butt end of the stick. It looked like accidentally to me. I mean, it wasn't a high hit. It was just an awkward situation. So to me, that looked more so like a freak accident. And then obviously Larkin, because he ran into Kelly, his like forearm shoulder, he got knocked out. It was just the wrong spot. It's so scary to see a player lying on the ice like that I can understand the freak reaction. Now, if we want to talk about David Perron, I'll throw the video up while I'm talking just because it goes
wait,
on a
actually,
little
before
bit.
we do Perron, can we let's talk about the Larkin thing,
Okay,
because
let's
I
just go
think
right into that first.
the Perron thing is
It's
yeah,
separate.
it's related, but it's separate, and it's kind of like it's obviously he'll get suspended. I actually expected we'll hear it mid recording here, so we can maybe break that and talk it down, or break it down as it happens. But so the thing is that Joseph, and he spoke today, right, to the media, and the Red Wings gave an update on Larkin. He's out week to week. It sounds like it's not good. It's not good. The thing that I think Sens fans need to understand, and I did some research, and by research I mean scroll through Red Wings Twitter feeds endlessly and aimlessly, because it was a cesspool pretty much, right? Like they're angry, and rightfully so, in the sense that their captain is now injured again long term with an upper body injury, a head and neck injury. And it's not his first. I believe it's his second or third. And there's one that was really similar to this. So I know that Wayne Scanlon, the Sens writer for Sportsnet, posted the video today on Twitter, and it was talking about, that's a great, I like they froze it there. It's perfect. It was talking about, it was a doctor breaking down the play, which was really, really interesting to see, like fascinating. It was like 7 minutes long, really insightful. And, the doctor's not there to break down what's a penalty and what's not, but he kept using the word benign. And from my experience, I believe that means kind of just like random or something like that. And then I think he said innocuous, something like that. Big words, obviously. But his point was like, there's no clear trauma to the head, which would make him knock out. And the reason I'm pointing this out and pointing out Larkin's injury history is because a couple seasons ago, they were playing the Dallas Stars, and I'd forgotten about this play, but it's a weird one where Jamie Benn's stick kind of gets in that same area, like his neck and jaw area, like right up here, right? And he kind of folds, and like I don't know if he got stretchered off, but he had a neck injury. He wore a neck brace for a while, so obviously there's something there with Dylan Larkin in terms of his own health. So that's the dicey thing about this whole situation. What makes it worse or maybe not worse, but what makes it worse for the Sens and Joseph's perspective is because Joseph and Larkin do have a history. That history being one in altercation wherein Joseph hit Larkin he boarded Larkin. It was a bad hit. And then Larkin gets up and sucker punches him. So there is some animosity there, like a 1-2 or whatever it is. But that's it. There's no history between these two players in junior. There's no history of them fighting, hating each other. Like there's nothing else other than that one moment that I can find anyway. So to suggest that, even if you take out the play in general, to suggest Joseph's targeting Dylan Larkin in this game, they've played like 5 or 6 times probably since that hit when Joseph was in Tampa. So suggesting that Joseph had any intent at all to injure Dylan Larkin is blasphemous to me. It's ridiculous. And like you mentioned, Joseph isn't even the one who knocks him out. It's Kelly's stick that does it. Now you can argue, if you slow it down like we did here, Joseph doesn't make a play for the puck, but I encourage people to watch any scrum on a power play, especially. Every player is doing what Joseph does. You abandon the puck and you go for the body, you try and box out. And yeah, his hands ride high. And I think the 2-minute roughing penalty was worth what he got. And you could even argue that maybe he didn't deserve one, but I think the refs got it right. And that was my immediate reaction. And it's really tough when you're judging a play to separate injury from incident, right? Like I want to go back to Aaron Dell on Drake Batherson. I think that's probably the closest thing that Sens fans can maybe relate to, right? Like a star player getting injured on a bullshit play kind of thing. But that was different because there was pure intent from Dell, and he's got a track record of doing reckless things. Matthew Joseph has one thing on his resume, and it was a fine for a high stick, I believe. He has never been suspended. So I don't need to defend Joseph to the people who are going to watch this podcast, but that's what needs to be put out there. The thing is with Larkin and everything, like even with the Aaron Dell thing, I think Dell got suspended for 3 games or something like that. And Batherson missed like 2 months, and obviously it impacted his play for 2 seasons pretty much. And we'll get into him in a little bit because he's obviously turning it on. But I think what I'm trying to say is you can't suspend or penalize based on injury result, right? Or whatever it is. So like, and I know that sometimes they do, like if Zub had gone down after this Perron play and Zub literally just came back from a concussion, he got hit in the ear with the puck right on that same ear. Like if something happened where he was more injured because of that, I think they would still factor that into the suspension. But when it's, and I do understand Red Wings fans being like, their captain's laying lifeless. Like, how is that nothing? Like, it's such a weird injury that it's really tough to say, like, what did Joseph do that earned anything more than 2 minutes, right? Like, and like you mentioned, it's not a blow to the head. He just shoved him in a direction, and like, I don't know, man.
You can see it right in the picture that's on the screen right now. It's Kelly's glove, his right arm, that knocked him out. It's not Joseph. It's that he pushed him into that. That was the blow to his head that knocked him out. But even that, like Kelly's that's not even really a high hit. It's just that his head is down because Joseph pushed it. I'm with you. I think Joseph should have got 2 minutes. Usually if they're around the head, it's roughing. Like that's not an abnormal call. But like this was such a fast play. This even in slow motion, like people are looking at this and saying Joseph used his back arm to punch the back of Larkin's head, but he never used force. Like he's just shoving him. You can see him shoving him. Like it's not a punch. That's the thing.
And there's a picture going around. It might be actually from this exact frame, but from this, like the perspective on the boards, like closest to where Korpisalo's feet are facing. That's the best way to describe it. And I think it's right there when his eyes go closed because he's out cold, and it cuts Kelly out, but you can see Joseph's hands on his head and Larkin out cold. That's the image I've seen circulating everywhere when you talk about it being an accident and not intentional. Like, I don't know, man. And it is important. Like, I know a lot of Red Wings fans are being completely ridiculous about this and threatening Joseph. Like, none of that's warranted. There's also Sens fans on our side who are being ridiculous as well. Like, it's not a one-sided thing here. However, discussing intent with Joseph is a non-conversation for me. Like, that's anything. Yeah. And you don't want to discuss this, but it is probably a case for some people. Like, Joseph is a visible minority. And like, I'll admit, I roll my eyes when I read stuff like that. But when it's a play like this involving 2 people and the person who is probably the least guilty of anything is getting targeted and getting hate and everything, getting booed when he touches the puck, like, it's not nothing is kind of what I'll say. Like, so that's the frustrating thing, I think, for Sens fans. And I understand wanting to defend Joseph and everything like that. And I understand Red Wings fans wanting an answer for what happened to their captain. But sometimes you just got to accept, I think, that it's just a freak thing. Like, I don't know if Jamie Benn got suspended, but it's hard to, I don't know. I don't have the video, obviously, but that was more malicious than this. And Larkin was injured as well, like same kind of area he got hit. But um, it's a crazy nugget to add to this rivalry. Is kind of the way I see it now.
Well, that's why I say it's like it's so weird. I mean, I wouldn't even be shocked if like a fight happened after that, because when your captain's on the ice, regardless of what happened, something like that happens. Usually there's going to be a fight. There's going to be some response, even if it was an accident, right? It's just, and we can talk about Perron now. It's this is not what happens after some regardless of, even if Joseph had accidentally like, or not even accidentally, even if it was somewhat targeted and he gave him a decent blow, like this is just so malicious. I don't know. This is so malicious from Perron. And the worst part is that he got the wrong player. Like you just cross check somebody who was, you can see Zub here actually like telling people to stop playing because their captain, like there's a guy laying on the ice. You can see his arm up at the bottom of the screen. He's literally telling everyone like, hold on here. By the way, it was Ottawa's players who checked on Larkin when he was on the ice, while Detroit's players like got into a mad
It was
frenzy
Joseph.
around
It
him,
was
which is
Joseph was
ridiculous.
also standing over
Yeah,
him, going like, "We'll see it. We'll see it here too."
exactly. And so like you let this play out. And then Zub is actually telling everybody, like, hey, this guy's down. And Perron just comes in with the cross check to the head. Zub even thought, like, okay, he's
Yeah,
going to give me a little shove. And then he gets him right in the head. Like, I'm shocked that Zub is even okay, to be honest with you, because that was wild. And then you can see Joseph at the bottom here actually checking on him. And then it's like immediately calling for help, right? Like, that's crazy. Then Raymond jumps on Sanderson. It's like, it's such a weird thing to do. And Perron, I'm hoping he gets like 5-10 games at least, because like that was just brutal, right? Like,
yeah.
like my
There's no
God, like,
excuse. Like,
that's intent.
yeah,
That's more than intent. That's like intent to seriously injure a human being. Like that's bordering assault. And I probably, maybe I'm being dramatic, but that's like a crazy dangerous play to the head. After, the whole thing in sports right now is protect players' heads. You look at football, you look at the CTE, you look at like concussions and stuff and how serious they are. Like Perron is basically doing this, and yes, emotions are high, but he's basically doing this with the intent to give Zub a concussion, which is crazy. And yeah, I mean, I've seen so many fans say like, and even like former players like Kevin Bieksa at the intermission, his take was that because emotions were high and you see your captain laying on the ice, Perron has to do something, and that this was basically justified, which is just so backwards. Like,
yeah,
okay, if you want to grab a player because your captain's down and maybe like fight him or like start scrumming with them, whatever, but you never ever, regardless of what happened, you never take your stick and cross check a guy in the side of the head. Zub's like unsuspecting too. Like, he's not
yeah.
expecting that to happen. He's not prepped for it. Like that is a blatantly dangerous place. So I'm excited to see what Perron's suspension is going to be, because it should be pretty hefty.
Me too. Me too. And I will say, like, I understand the response from Perron. Like, I'm not knocking him doing something, because reverse the roles. If Stützle was lying on the ice like that or something, like, or if, uh, with a recurring injury, if it was Norris or something like that who got a cheap shot, I'd want someone on the Sens to go after whoever did it. Just Perron's an idiot and got the wrong guy, right? And um, I think that's what's so crazy to me about the people calling for Joseph's head and not even mentioning Parker Kelly, is because Perron went after the wrong guy. It proves how strange of a play it was. Like that a specific play will happen. I guarantee you can watch any game tonight. It'll happen 5 times in every game where there's a scrum in front and
The
someone.
goalie was on his back. Like it
Exactly.
was a
It was a
scrum.
scramble. It was a classic Dean Brown scramble moment. So that's what I mean. I know that we're talking to 95% of the people listening are going to agree with us because we're a Sens podcast and everything like that. But yeah, it's actually, you know what? I haven't really sat down and watched this in slow motion since the night of. It's insane to me that no more people aren't coming after Parker Kelly. Like there's no intent there, but that's the blow. So there's no reason Joseph should be the one that's like, maybe you could argue he put him in that position, but like it's just, I don't know, man. Like I understand that if that happened to the Sens and it was a weird play, like I'd want answers too. I'd be kind of livid for no reason, but
But like the puck is loose too. Like
I know.
Larkin's got his stick on the puck with the goalie on his back. If he
Yeah.
backhands that puck and gets any air on it, it's in the net. So Joseph's obviously going to push him away from the puck.
And I want to also say something because yeah, I said like the refs were right kind of thing, and like that's such a statement where when you're the fan of a team that benefited from the call and had a good game, like obviously you're going to say that, but I think what we got to consider here is two things. Like it's a fast game. It is a very fast game, and the refs miss a lot of stuff, and we give them grief for it all the time, and rightfully so sometimes, and other times maybe it's not warranted. But this time, because they gave Joseph a match penalty, it gave them the option to review the whole play. And yeah, it took a long time, but when the refs sat down and watched it with the iPad, they got the right call. So you got to give credit where credit's due a little bit, because that's a play where if you don't make the right call. Like it can get out of hand kind of quickly. And like Joseph they did fight and stuff like that. But I just think that the officiating deserves a little bit of credit because it's such a weird scenario. But when they watched it with their iPad, on the tablet or whatever it was, they didn't see anything malicious on Joseph or Kelly's end. And like you can't, it's hard to argue if they literally have the chance to watch it over and over again in slow motion like we just did. And the officials came up with that answer. And yeah, Tim Peel, I know you mentioned Tim Peel, and it's actually good that we brought it up because he's a former ref, right? So you would think maybe there's some kind of discrepancy there, but Tim's tweet, I don't know why I just said Tim. That felt weird. Tim Peel's tweet, I don't know him that well. He was replying, I think, to Mark Mathott's tweet about it, right? And he was just asking the question, like, so what should Joseph get then? I don't know if he meant like Joseph should be suspended. Like I think he was maybe just asking the question. I don't know. I didn't actually see anything else from Tim Peel, but you know, again, like refereeing is going to be subjective anytime. But I think that objectively, though, in that instance, they got the call right. They gave out 2 minor penalties to Ottawa, and then Perron obviously got the major. But like if you take out Perron's actions, the Red Wings still benefit from that. They get like a 5-on-3, a double 5-on-3. Like that's a great opportunity. They still scored on it anyway. So that to me is kind of, I guess, like there isn't a ton to say. It sucks. And I really do hope Dylan Larkin's okay. It sucks seeing that, and especially with a guy who has recurring injuries like that. But this was far from a dirty play. If it was another thing where Joseph hit him from behind or something like that again in an awkward spot, that's a different conversation to me. But this was such a nothing play that just ended up being a disaster, which is unfortunate.
It is, and that's why I wanted to tweet that stuff out. That's why I've still been talking about it a little bit, is because Joseph, like, he had to turn off his Instagram comments. If you look up the things tagging him on Twitter, like it's all just like bad hate, and it's like, imagine you didn't do anything intentional, and I mean you watch that, and it's hard to even say. Again, Joseph wasn't even the one that actually caused the damage here. And he's getting all this hate, and of course you don't want Kelly to get the hate either. Nobody should get the hate because it's a freak accident. But you've got all the Red Wings fans thinking that it was a punch to the back of the head. And it's like they just have the blinders on where they're not actually seeing. They just want to hate on somebody because their captain's hurt. And obviously that's a huge loss for their team, and it's a bad thing. But that's why I wanted to break that stuff down, is because like Joseph is not in the wrong here. He shouldn't be getting the hate. Like he shouldn't be having to deal with this on social media, and it happens, right? It's part of sports, but it's just unfortunate to see. So with that, I think we can move on from it. I mean, it's hopefully, I mean, I love the rivalry anyways. Like Joseph kind of embraced the villain arc actually, because for one, he was getting booed every time he touched the puck. Like it was loud on TV in there in Detroit. And then he immediately went and like made this beautiful play to set up Dominic Kubalik for a goal. Kubalik against his former team. And you could just feel the life sucked out of that arena at that point. Then he got into a fight, which, I mean, he didn't really get any punches up, but he tackled the guy down, Christian Fisher, kind of like won in the end of the day. Then he goes to the penalty box, and a clip goes viral of him looking at one of the fans, probably trash talking him, and saying, "I still look good, baby. I still look good." That's what he's saying. He's like making all the facial gestures. So he's embracing this villain arc, and I like that. I mean, I like being the bad guy for a team. You play them and they all hate you. And that's kind of what Ottawa is becoming, to be honest with you. They have that shtick. Starts with Brady Tkachuk, like most fan bases outside of Ottawa. Although they might like Brady as a dude, like they hate playing against Brady Tkachuk because he just does all of the nonsense. He does the agitator. Now they've got Ridley Gregg. I tweeted out, I love Ridley Gregg's agitator persona. Reminds me a lot of Marchand. Obviously, Marchand's like a premier player with skill too, but like it's that same rat type of personality. Like Brady's physical. He's not afraid to get in there, fight somebody. But Ridley's like, he's the agitator. Like he's doing stuff behind the scenes. It started last year. Remember, like when they played Toronto that one game, he was like getting in behind the goalie after the play and stuff. In this game against Detroit, he like slashed the puck off somebody's stick after the whistle, and then they all started the scrum. He's just so good at pissing people off. And I think there was even a clip of Detroit's coach actually saying like "F you Ridley" or "F you Greg." And I don't know if that was to Ridley Gregg or like if one of the
It couldn't have been.
Greg, but
there's no way.
I was like, if he's actually saying that, he's in the coach's head. Like this guy's next level. And Ridley Gregg obviously also emerging as a really important and talented player. By the way, no, I don't know which game he came back now, but no coincidence, I don't think, that the Sens have suddenly started playing better when Ridley Gregg's back in the lineup.
I think
like
I talked about, it was a Rangers game.
Yeah, I really talked about how important Gregg was to this team. You've got Chartier playing on the third line. It's like addition by subtraction there, but Gregg, just the little things he does, like he does a lot of little things. His metrics almost entirely lead the Sens in every single category. Like he's excellent defensively. He's excellent with the puck on his stick. Even on that Joseph Kubalik goal I just talked to, he didn't get an assist, but he started the play with a body check. He body checked and he separated the puck from the player. Joseph gets the puck, goes in, passes it to Kubalik, they score. So I love that line. And although they weren't producing a whole lot at the beginning, they are starting to click. And yeah, after that, I think we can move on to a little bit of Jacques Martin, maybe a little bit of the Sens lines. We could actually, do you want to do the turnaround first or Martin? I'm going to leave this up to you.
It's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Like, I mean, they go hand in
Put it
hand
together. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we didn't really get a chance to talk about Jacques Martin, but he's obviously been announced as a senior advisor to the coaching staff. He's been here for 3 games now, eye in the sky with Alfie and Ben Sexton, just expanding the coaching staff. A little bit of a, it was the classic. I think I described it as this to some of my friends. We were talking about it when Steve Staios was hired. It was the big quote was, "I'm here to support Pierre. Steve's here to support Pierre." Pierre Dorion was fired a month later. I'm not suggesting that'll happen with DJ, but it's a move to be like, hey, we have options here, right? So and very smart options, accomplished options, known options in the city. So that I think that's what this is. It's a band-aid solution and a safety net all in one, right? But that being said, I mean, obviously since he came, the 5-on-5 play has been astoundingly better. In December overall, it's just been way better. And we'll get into those stats here in the December turnaround part. But I think you can make the argument that this was maybe not bound to happen, but like we've seen this team play well. We've seen them play good games. And having Ridley Gregg healthy, having most of your defensemen healthy, Chabot being back for those 2 games, even though he's out now for at least a month again, which is awful. But having him back for those 2 games helped. The pairings got a little bit more solidified. JBD's playing great hockey. So that kind of stuff ended up happening, coincides with Martin being here. But I think it's also a case of them playing a regular NHL schedule now, getting in the groove, playing every other night kind of thing. But yeah, so I'll talk about December turnaround, but Jacques Martin is certainly a big part of it. And I'm really happy he's here because it's refreshing. You could hear it in his press conference, just very confident in Jacques Martin. But yeah, December has been like the classic December Ottawa Senators. It's pretty funny. Like 2 losses still, but the difference in those losses, even the Columbus one, which was frustrating because it was Columbus, but they were the better team for most of it. And slowly, like game by game, as they get goaltending, it seems that they're tightening up defensively in their own end. And I want to run through some stats that Ian Mendez pointed out in his piece this morning about their 5-on-5 play. Like this is mostly just analytics here, but the league rank is what I'm going to say for the first 2 months and then December. So it's been 5 games in December, I believe they've played now. So in the first 2 months, their Corsi 4 percentage was 48%, which is good enough for 23rd in the league. Now they're 9th. In December, they're 9th. Not now overall, but since the beginning of December, they're 9th. SF percentage, I'm assuming that's shots for percentage or saves.
Shots for.
Shots for, perfect.
Just shots, shots for divided by shots against, basically.
So Corsi is shot attempts, and shots for would just be straight up shots. Yeah. Okay, so in that one, they're 7th in the league. They were 21st in the first 2 months. Goals for percentage, they're 5th, and they were 16th before. And we pointed out how good their finishing had been already. And the goal for percentage is now 5th in December. Like they've been that good. Expected goals for is also 5th. It was 29th in the first 2 months. So that pointed to the luck we were talking about. Like they were producing well over the rate they were creating at, which was kind of backwards from last year. We always mentioned. And then what's HDGF percentage? I'm learning here. Or HD
high danger goals for percentage. So high danger goals for versus high danger goals against divided by.
Okay, yeah. So they're thriving. This is exciting. Yeah. This is really exciting. So they were 22nd in the first 2 months at 46%, but 75% now, which is third best in December. So they're trending. They're trending in the right direction, which is what we expected. We needed it to happen. There's a lot of reasons why, but why don't you just go ahead and just what you've seen, like the difference in how they're playing, because it's obvious in the stats and the eye test tells us too.
Yeah, well, the stats too, like they're supported. Like I look back to the last 4 games, and even the game against Columbus, like their last 4 games, they've been above a 50.0 XGF percentage, which is like 50 is kind of the baseline. You want to be above that. That kind of insinuates that you had more chances, you created better opportunities, you held the play more. And like their best was 65.98. That was against Toronto. That was the only game they lost out of those last 4. That was their best of the season. Like they were, aside from Joseph Wall and kind of a man game from Forsberg. Like they actually really dominated Toronto in that game. But those 4 games, I mean, like they were hardly above 50 before that for the past, 10, 20, like the whole season, they'd hardly hit 50. Now they're way up above 50 in each of these games. Their high danger chances, the same thing. It's way up above 50. They've created more high danger chances than they've given up in each of those games. Same with Columbus. Like in Columbus, I mean, they really dominated, all things considered. They just didn't get the goals. But I love the stats, obviously, but I love the eye test too. And that's the big thing. Last year, for example, they had a lot of good stats, but the eye test didn't really match it. Like, I mean, they carried play at times, but they didn't, like, you can just tell when you're watching a team when they look structured and when they look lucky. And I find right now, these last 4 or 5 games, Ottawa's look structured. That's where I point to Jacques Martin. I don't know if he's had an impact that quickly. But at the same time, like, is it a coincidence that you hire a Jacques Martin who is known to be an X's and O's coach? Like, I went back and looked at his articles. One of the things that stood out to me, his quote from like 2009 with Montreal, was that he believes in a possession hockey game. He believes that the best defense is by playing offense. It's by having the puck on your stick. That's how you have to think in the modern game NHL. You don't just bend but not break in the defensive zone. You strive to get the puck on your stick and sustain pressure, right? And Martin, like, is it a coincidence that Ottawa suddenly has put this all together? Like, I don't know if it is. Maybe it just is, but to me, their breakouts are a big thing. I think they've been passing the puck really well out of the defensive zone. That was one of their biggest issues. They struggled in the neutral zone. I thought they struggled in transition. Dump and chase, I have not noticed much dump and chase over the last 5 games. Like, it's been almost non-existent. It's been a whole lot of like actual tape to tape quality passes, open players in the neutral zone skating through with speed. That's what you want to do. Like, that's how the good teams win games, is that they dominate the neutral zone and then they plug it up defensively too. Still some scrambles in the D zone a little bit, but that's going to happen, right? Like, even the other night against Detroit, they had a few scrambles. Corp Sala played a great game. You need that. But like, scrambles are always going to happen. It's just, you need to limit them. And I think they've been doing that more. I think they've been playing tighter defensively. My big thing really is with the possession, though. They've been doing a great job with keeping the puck on their stick, skating through. So refreshing to watch. The dump and chase is like, it's not an effective strategy, but it's also tiring to watch because you're literally seeing Tim Stützle, one of the most skilled players in the NHL, cross the red line, have a little bit of space to maneuver, and he just fires the puck off his stick. Like, you never want to get rid of the puck. You want your best players to keep the puck on their stick. Even if they're not like going in for a shot, just keep the puck on your stick, skate it in, turn back, set up in the offensive zone. That's how you get those quality chances. That's why they're scoring more goals. That's why they look really good. So I love the way it's playing out right now. Eye test matches the analytics. Analytics have been great. Another thing, and we can talk about a couple of the players too. I've got just the December stats pulled up. Like Drake Batherson, 2 goals, 7 points in his last 5 games. He's up to 19 points in 22 games in the season. That is awesome because he had a slow start. People were very concerned about him. I think he's got multi-point performances here in the last few games. He's done very well and been noticeable in the eye test, winning battles. Made that great pass to Tim the other night against Detroit. Tarasenko, obviously today, I didn't get a chance to really look deep into it, but some of the Sens players were at Chio with the kids. Tarasenko, and then he had something like this earlier in the year too. He was like the most involved. He was taking pictures. He was playing hockey with the kids. Like, he is a community guy. To be honest with you, with this, I don't know if this is a hot take yet, but I want them to sign him again after this year. I know the thought was kind of he's going to come in, he's going to get 1 year, and then he's going to prove to the league that he deserves another big contract. I don't know what his contract's going to look like. If he keeps playing like this, it's going to be pretty hefty. But listen, Ottawa's got the buyout money coming off the books next year. They're going to have more. The cap's expected to go up to like almost 88, I think. I think that's what they announced. So I'd be okay with signing Tarasenko to another 1, 2, 3 year deal. Like, I know he's getting older. He's not super fast anymore, but hey, like, he's also got 3 points, 3 goals and 3 assists in December in 5 games as well. Like, he's been one of their best players too. So I'm just really happy with how this is turning out. Tarasenko, Batherson, Stützle too. That's the new line. They've kind of finally hit the lines. That's another key factor behind all this. Their lines just kept mixing through the first couple months of the season. They couldn't find anything that worked. Now they've got a set combo that seems to be working. So hopefully that sticks. Bernard Docker on defense too. No real metrics to point out, but he's been solid. Like, he's been playing decent minutes with Jake Sanderson, and he's looked really good. The UND pairing is back. They played together there, and he's been he hasn't been a noticeable player, but that's good. That's what you want. You don't want him to stand out because he's literally supposed to be a shutdown defenseman. We talked about him a little while back. I said that I think when he starts to realize that his role should be as a shutdown defenseman, that's when he's going to play well. Seems to be doing that. Like, he had his first goal the other night, but honestly, offensively, he's just making the simple plays. Enough of the kind of trying to make these crazy stretch passes and like all this stuff that's a little fancy. He's just been doing the simple breakout passes. And I think they've been doing that as a whole too. That's part of the reason they've been doing a lot better. The forwards have been coming deeper back into the O zone. The defensemen make a simple pass instead of trying that crazy stretch pass that works 1 out of 10 times. Like, it's so much more structured. And I don't want to just credit Martin because I want to do that, but like I know I shouldn't. DJ Smith should get some credit here. This is the weird thing, the weird kind of relationship we've got here is that if Ottawa starts, like if they can sustain the success, I mean, it started right when Jacques Martin got hired. And I'm assuming he was probably with the team for a few days before it got announced too. Like, I mean, how do you not credit Martin coming in? Like, DJ is not going to get as much credit as he would have previously. So it's going to be kind of a weird thing to watch and see how that happens. I don't even know if Martin would want to go behind the bench if they did get rid of DJ at this point in his life. Like, I think he's like 71 years old now, but you never know, right? I mean, he still seems very engaged. So yeah, I'm happy with that hiring. I think it's perfect. You got an X's and O's coach to kind of support a coach who, and DJ Smith, who frankly is not an X's and O's coach. He's a player's coach. He gets the best out of his players. However, 4 years of seeing the exact same issues, giving up a ton of high danger chances, struggling to break out, struggling to do anything other than dump and chase, struggling to get offensive zone high danger chances. Like it's been a ton of perimeter play. Suddenly you bring a different guy in who has really proven over his million years around the game that he's a guy who knows how to get these players to play a structured, sound game. I mean, if you combine those two things on paper, it seems like it should work really well. In the first 5 games here, it's looked really good, or 4 games, it's looked really good. So I'm excited to see more. Hopefully this isn't a stint. That's all I can say. Because even though they've been playing so well, they're still 11-11 right now, which is, I don't know what it is by points percentage anymore, but points wise, they're still way behind other teams in games played. They're still at the bottom of the standings. 11-11. We've talked about it. 500 is nowhere near good enough for the playoffs. So even though they've had a good stretch of games, they're going to have to sustain it. They've got a 5-game road trip coming up, and a tough one at that. They've got Vegas, Colorado, like some really good teams. I think Dallas too. So yeah, I mean, we're going to see what happens, but this is an exciting time because, Christmas is coming and now we've got Jacques Martin in the mix. Like I said, we've got the whole front office and they're looking a lot better on the ice.
Yeah, it is refreshing. I think that's probably the word I use. Just like you mentioned earlier, seeing Sexton, Alfie, and Martin up there now, it's a big change from seeing Pierre Maguire and Pierre Dorion a couple of years ago there. But yeah, and you're right. I don't think it's a stint. I do think that they're really turning a corner again. Like it's December, like they always do. But this feels different. It feels more structured than it ever has. To me, I'm getting the same feeling I was getting when they were playing Washington and Philly and Tampa in those first few games of the year. It feels like they found that again. The thing I wanted to mention that I've also noticed has changed, that doesn't really pop up on the stats is, bouncing back after a bad momentum shift. So I mentioned, obviously, when we were talking about Larkin and that whole play, how the Red Wings still got a power play out of it. Patrick Kane, DeBrincat to Kane, it's a 1-1 game. Place is buzzing in Detroit. Like, Showtime just scored a goal, does a big celly. The Sens easily, like that could have folded them. It really could have, right? Instead, they go in with a 1-1 tie and have their best second period of the season, and they've been the worst second period team in the NHL. So they do that on the road. I know Detroit was depleted, like they had like 5 or 10 forwards playing, whatever it was that they had. But I think what is impressive and how you show maturity as a young team is being able to fight through momentum swings like that. And that's kind of the thing I was talking about that doesn't show up on the stats, right? And there were still growing pains. Like they played really well against Toronto, but in my opinion, yeah, Forsberg didn't play well and Wall played out unreal. But in my opinion, I think they lost that game because of 2 really bad mistakes in 2 really bad line changes, right? So when they clean that stuff up, which is controllable stuff, which is why it's frustrating when it goes wrong. When they clean that stuff up, it's really fun to watch. And a guy I actually wanted to point out, and we already talked about him, but Ridley Gregg, because you talked about JBD and Batherson and all of that. Ridley Gregg, I mean, it wasn't his fault, but on the 4th goal against Toronto, on Nylander's eventual game winner, it was Gregg who skated the puck up and then didn't get it deep, and he got rocked at the Sens bench, and just a tough shift for him. And he might have been on for that first goal against as well, on that like Marner's breakaway goal, if I'm remembering right. Like I think he was on there. So for him to bounce back and play well like he did against Detroit and just be that pest, if you're on the 3rd line, you're not expected to be the top producers. You're not going to get the toughest matchup, but a lot of the time at home, like you're going to see the other team's top line if they want to get them away from the Sens top guys. Like I think Greg saw a good amount of ice time against DeBrincat again and against Patrick Kane and stuff like that. So the fact that he was able to do that, be a pest, and be I think he had a great 3rd period too, and the game was kind of out of reach already, but he was still being a pest. That's what he's going to do. That's how he's going to make his living in the NHL. He's got top 6 potential, but he's not going to be a top 6 player on this team in the next 2 seasons, right? So where he is right now, it's great that he's growing into that role. And I can't wait to see him with Pinto, man. I really think that can be something special. But for the time being, it's pretty fun to watch as well. Like I don't have anything against that third line right now. It really makes them a deep team.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned Pinto too, because that's the exciting thing coming up is that they've really Ottawa only has reinforcements coming here. They don't have anything else happening. And again, I've released an article too on everydaysens.com talking about how the Sens could actually use Shabbat's injury to improve their team in the long term. And the premise is just that like they've got $8 million in cap flexibility now. They're not sitting at the cap. Like they couldn't even afford to recall Yuri Schmeichel, but with Shabbat in the lineup, that's how tight they were to the cap. Now they can do that. I know Crookshank suffered an injury the other night, but he's a guy I want to see if he does get healthy again in the next little bit. Max Gwinnett on defense, he's been outstanding, almost a point per game player in the AHL as a defenseman. Very, very impressed with him. I want to see him because Travis Hammond continues to be a complete liability, literally killing all of his partners, by the way. Eric Brandstrom played some ridiculously good games, metrics, eye test, all of it with Artem Zub. And then he goes back with Hamonic and he has a bad game with Hamonic. It's like, it's no coincidence. There's no coincidences here. There's a lot of stuff happening that you kind of have to put together as pieces of the puzzle. So yeah, you got Pinto coming, you've got Shabbat coming back at some point. I think, if a guy like Schmeichel can stand out, he had kind of a rough debut, but he also didn't play much. So I'm not putting much stock into that. If he can stand out and keep a role in that lineup, right? Once Pinto does come back, they're probably going to have to make a trade of some sort unless somebody else gets hurt. We'll see what happens. Regardless, I think this is a great chance here over the next month to evaluate, some of those younger guys. You've also got Sokolov waiting for a chance to come up and play in the NHL. You've got all sorts of players down there who are just waiting in the wings. So I'm excited to see. But other than that, tomorrow night, and I guess it'll be tonight when this gets released, they've got who do they play? Carolina. They've got Carolina coming up.
Struggling
So that's going to be
Hurricanes
another.
team.
Yeah, it would be something. I mean, the typical Sens would let them kind of bounce back against them because they just had this big thing about this Carolina talk they had in this deep soul searching over there. So hopefully Ottawa can take advantage because I'm so tired of them bouncing between negative and 500. It's exhausting. So get a bit of a cushion. But other than that, I mean, we're going to do a pregame show too, I guess, tonight. So just an hour before the game. So that'll be exciting. We'll talk more about the game tonight then.
I got one more thing that I wanted to mention. I know you pointed out, and that's why I'm bringing it up. How good was Jake Sanderson on Saturday night?
He was insane. He was nuts, and he
I think it's the best game he's had.
In his XGF percentage, I just know this because it's ridiculous. Was like 83.3 or something, which is basically means like the Sens didn't give up anything when he was on the ice, and they took it to Detroit. Like he was dominant, and he's just underappreciated because we've gotten so used to his play now. But he's like, what do you think? Where do you rank him among league defensemen right now? Like a top 20, top 15, top 30?
It is tough because I think a lot of those guys that are up there, longevity matters, right? Like doing it over and over again. But you get to next year, if he keeps improving like this, I don't think it's going to sound crazy because you think of all the names in the top 15, top 20, and you're like, wow, okay, these guys are all, they've been in Norris conversations at least one point in their life. But Jake Sanderson is the kind of player where if he's in a bigger market, he's talked about nonstop. And honestly, he still is. I think he gets plenty of respect from other coaches, other players, and everything like that. Especially this season, he's gotten a lot of praise. But the thing with him, I saw someone tweet it too, and it's the perfect way to describe the way he plays. If you isolate and watch him, you probably groan or say like, "Oh my God," to yourself like 3 or 4 times a shift. Like he's that good, and it's the plays he makes in his own end, like from the hash marks down, that just are the best thing to me. Like his skating's unbelievable. His offensive awareness is just getting better. All of that, like his shot's great, passing's great. But the plays he makes with his stick, like in the defensive zone below the hash marks, is the most elite thing I've ever seen.
It's insane.
The comparison I saw for him that I really liked was Scott Niedermayer. And obviously I really liked it because it's one of the best defensemen of all time. But I think Niedermayer was a bit of a smaller player. We were too young to watch him, but obviously beat the Sens in the 07 and the cup final, little sunset cup for him. But he was a smaller player, but just so good with his stick, offensively gifted. But I think he was a defensive defenseman is how people would describe him. So Niedermayer to me feels like a good comparison for Jake Sanderson, maybe a more modernized version of him. Just eats shots for a living. I think that game against Seattle, he had like 6 block shots or something like that. He
does everything.
He's an absolute monster. He does everything. You're right. And I'm like, he looks more comfortable on the power play and stuff too. I know they've been moving that around. Special teams is still a tiny bit of a concern for me. They produced last game, but it was the second unit who was doing it, right? So they've been more productive all season. So that's maybe something to look for going forward. The PK was great, obviously. and Sanderson and Zub are a huge part of that. But I think what's exciting about the deep pairings right now is Shabbat's out, but you've got Sanderson and Zub separated, and we're still good. And it's because JBD stepped up. It's because Chikrin's comfortable now with Zub. That's who they played. Yeah, on Saturday it was Chikrin and Zub, wasn't it? Or was it?
Yep, Chikrin and
Yeah,
Zub, and then
yeah.
Brandstrom Hamannik. Yeah.
So I know we mentioned too, like we'll wrap up here in a second, but you mentioned that Hamannik is sinking every pairing, and he is. It's tough, but it's good that everyone can play with everyone, though. I think in the silver lining of juggling all the pairings with injuries and everything, it's been good because everyone's at least got some kind of familiarity with everyone. But right now it's good, and there's probably something to it that all the left shot D are playing on their right side right now. They're playing on the left side. Probably has a good impact on what's happening, but it's been really fun to watch, man. I just hope they can keep it rolling because going into that road trip is going to be it's going to be a doozy, but I feel much different than I did a week ago about it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the tone has completely changed around the team. So, I'm excited to see what happens. But yeah, I mentioned this before the New York game too. I kind of like this gauntlet. I like the hard teams they're playing because it gives them a chance to prove that they're not a joke. I said, they need to take 3 of the 4 games in the next 4, and Carolina makes 4 tomorrow. So if you beat Carolina, you achieve that. You also outplayed Toronto in that one loss. So I'm happy that they're proving themselves, because if you beat bad teams, that's fine. But like you're expected to, when you beat the Rangers, you come out and you beat a hot Red Wings team, you dominate both of those games too. Play well against Toronto, right? They beat Seattle 2-0. They've got another good team. Like if you beat them, people are going to start to take notice. It's not just us Sens fans. It's going to be the league taking notice that even though Ottawa, they've played way less games, so they're at the bottom of the standings, they're now beating really good teams that are at the top of the standings. So excited to see this road trip too, because they haven't typically been a good team on the road. But again, it's just all about tests and proving yourself. So excited to see it, and I guess we'll see you guys in a few hours.
They are 3-3 on the road this season. So, and 2 of them, from what I remember, the Leafs one in Toronto, and then this most recent one, were very impressive. I don't know what the third one was, but nonetheless, like an impressive road showing so far, I'd say. But you're right, road games have been a struggle for them. I think after the Seattle game, it was something like 9 straight games against a team in a playoff spot. So it's a good measuring stick. And you mentioned league recognition. TSN put out their power rankings this week. Ottawa Senators at number 11 on power rankings, which is, I'd say, pretty fair. They're pretty hot. You can't really argue with that. So that'll do it for this episode of the Everyday Sens podcast. Please like the video on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube account, subscribe to everydaysens.com as well for in-depth analysis. Brennan's always pumping out great articles over there. For a small fee, it's worth the price of admission. So thanks everyone for watching. We appreciate the feedback. We'll see you tonight, like Brennan said, for a pregame show right here on YouTube live. And we'll see you all then. Go Sens, go.